This is Nosferatu for the SNES. It's a cinematic platformer that combines horror, platforming, and a bit of beat 'em up to create a game that is as much action as it is creepy. With a super dark soundtrack and excellent cutscenes, gameplay, and graphics, this one definitely helps set the tone for horror games that would come after it. It was released in 1995 by the Sega Corporation, who created a substantial library of games from the NES all the way up to the Xbox 360 until they called it quits in 2009. Nosferatu is definitely a game you should check out if you can get your hands on it, and it's today's subject on SideQuest. As I made my way through this genuinely enjoyable cinematic platformer, I was constantly greeted by recognizable monsters and challenging puzzles, which gave the game a fresh feel all the way to the end. Sharing the same name as the critically acclaimed classic film, Nosferatu, you play as Kyle, who goes on a wild journey to find his captured girlfriend who has been kidnapped by the evil Nosferatu himself. Along the way, you'll run into ghouls, goblins, werewolves, and so much more. Nosferatu plays a lot like Prince of Persia, where the player is racing against the clock to save a damsel in distress. Instead of using weapons, Nosferatu uses a melee style of combat, as Kyle punches his way through monster after monster, completing 6 different levels in the process. Nosferatu is a strange beast of a cinematic platformer, in that because of the punching and kicking, it almost feels like a beat 'em up. Traversing through the world seems a bit more linear than many of the other classic puzzle platformers, but the running clock and enemy variation provides a constant sense of urgency. The player must make his way through 6 castles, and each one is beautifully made. From the living paintings that shoot at you to various traps and spikes, Nosferatu will keep you on your toes throughout the entire playthrough. Pair these beautiful levels with an engaging soundtrack, and you have the makings of a great gaming experience. Graphics and sound are by far Nosferatu's greatest attributes. From the very beginning, players are treated to one of the best intro cutscenes ever, and it's obvious that much care was given to make sure cutscene animations were fluid, natural, and most importantly, complementary to the story being told. Backgrounds provide excellent depth, and fighting and enemy animations are excellent as well. Nosferatu is very dark and gritty, without being difficult to see, and retains beauty even in darkness. Nosferatu was made to be a genuine horror game, and the music goes to great lengths to set this tone. Music within each castle is extremely creepy, and it'll drive you crazy if you listen to it long enough. The music is made of ambience and heavy breathing and heartbeat sounds, and adds a great deal of tension to an already spooky game. There's no way to get around the fact Nosferatu is hard. Some enemies will flatten you before you can even react, and many of the game's jumps sometimes feel like luck after trying them over and over. And once again, as with other cinematic platformers, the controls are tedious and take getting used to. And also, fans of cinematic platformers will immediately no doubt recognize the difficult running, jumping, hanging, platforming, and problem solving that defines the genre. Instead of weaponry, Kyle fights everyone with nothing more than the bare hands he was born with. This may frustrate some who are used to instantly killing all their enemies with an array of weapons, but I appreciate the simplicity in just whooping all enemies and monsters with my fists. However, I sometimes felt that the melee attacks were delayed or unresponsive, which led to me taking some frustrating damage. In a game where melee attacks are the only way to defeat enemies, you would expect the controls to be crisp and responsive. This made the game a bit more challenging than it needed to be. For example, there are tons of areas where you need to do a quick slide under a small opening, and I could only pull it off about 50% of the time, even after being quite familiar with the controls. And also quick jumps, I could never get fully confident that they would work as expected when I needed them. Another issue I did have with this game, however, was the oftentimes awful enemy AI. Sometimes enemies would literally just walk right past you and not attack even though you are clearly open. Even still, I was surprised and delighted to see many of the monsters that are still a part of pop culture today. During Nosferatu, you encounter a standard ghost, Frankenstein's monster, a few werewolves, and so much more, including a few that don't necessarily make sense. Each stage ends with a unique and challenging boss that the players must defeat to move up the hill. Although the enemy variation may seem like a trivial reason to get excited, it really differentiates this game from many in the same genre. Many similar games throw 2 or 3 enemies at you the entire playthrough and leave them feeling stale. I would recommend you find a copy of Nosferatu and pop it in now. This is an extremely well made and creepy game that can certainly give any gamer a challenge and a scare even today. If you're a fan of Blackthorn or Prince of Persia with a twist of horror and beat 'em up, you should do yourself a real favor and pick this game up. Hey, thanks for checking out this video all about Nosferatu for the SNES. This game's a bit rare and is one of the more collectible games in my library. However, still a great game. Honestly, compared with the other cinematic platformers that I've covered lately, this has got to be lower on the list and gave me more frustration than the others. Still though, it's a great game and definitely worth a try to experience an early horror genre game that does a great job at truly setting a dark tone. Anyway, if you've tried Nosferatu, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments, and join me next time on SideQuest when I take a look at yet another cinematic platformer that was inspired by the Poseidon Adventure book and movie called SOS.